welcome back to Shelf Talks, the podcast where we dive deep into the journeys of female founders bringing their product-based businesses to retail shelves. Today is going to be a solo educational episode, really getting to the truth. The truth is, getting your product on retail shelves isn't the win that you think it is. I know that might sound crazy, especially if your goal has been to get on retail shelves since day one. But here's the truth. Getting on retail shelves is just the start. Succeeding on retail shelves is really the win. And I've seen it happen over and over again. Brands celebrate that first yes being in a retailer, which of course is so exciting. You've done so much hard work to get there. But then they quietly disappear after just a matter of months because they're not putting the same energy that they did to get on retail shelves post that initial launch into stores. So on today's episode, I'm breaking down the 5 biggest mistakes brands make after landing their first retailer, and really what you should be doing instead if you actually want to stay on the shelf and scale. Because again, the goal isn't just about getting in retail. The goal is to build a brand that performs in retail. All right, let's start with number 1. The number 1 biggest mistake brands make when they're first getting into that retail store is thinking that getting on shelf equals success. This is really, I think, one of the biggest mind shifts that founders need to make. Like I said at the beginning, getting on shelf, of course, is success. The hard work that you've done, the late nights, the practicing for the pitch, the getting the product ready from a manufacturing side. I understand and see it all. But you can't pull back on the momentum that you gained prior to all of that work to get that final yes once your product lands on shelf. That really is where all of the work begins. Buyers are really not rewarding you shelf space. They're really testing you to see, is your product going to actually be successful once it's on shelf? They're thinking about and looking at the data weekly. Is the product going to sell? And once the product does sell, is the customer going to come back and buy it again? And then through the multiple, what buyers call SKU rationalization, in which we look at the full assortment of products that fill our category and determine what the winners are and what are the ones that we're looking at exiting, we're thinking, does this brand still deserve to be here? And if the answer is no, sadly, you're going to get replaced. So if you treat getting on shelf like I made it instead of now the work really begins, you're already behind. So what do you do instead? Where have I seen even the best success stories when it comes to landing in that first retail store? I think the number 1 thing that I've seen from a brand that actually succeeds once it's initially on retail shelves is that they already have a plan in how they're going to do that prior to day one. They're going into retail with a performance mindset, not a celebration mindset. 2 big different things, right? They're thinking about how they're going to utilize their community in order to drive traffic and awareness into store. So how do you do that? You're going to have a solid plan on how you're going to drive sales. Of course, this plan can change, it can adjust, right, based on the results that you're seeing once you're actually on store shelves. But the goal is to have a plan before going in. A plan that you can really execute from day one and iterate and change as you move forward. This is going to put you 10 steps ahead of somebody that's going in with a celebratory mindset versus a performance mindset. Think about it like when Pepsi launches a new flavor, they have a campaign around it, right? They're not setting it just on shelves and not telling anyone about it. And buyers aren't looking for those emerging newer brands to put the same amount of money and spend behind, because we know you don't have that money to spend. But what buyers do expect is for you to have a plan to utilize the spend that you do have, right? And the influence and the community that you do have. Again, and I've said this in previous episodes, you have to think about your product is on the shelf of many other brands that are sitting next to yours. So I'm sure one of your goals of being in retail stores is that you are going to be able to have more people have eyes on your product. But with that, you're going to have a reason for them to pick it up. And that usually starts outside of the 4 walls. And especially in today's time, I think, prior to a lot of social media, prior to places like TikTok, maybe, consumers did take a little bit more time in the aisles and educate themselves and learn. But what we know today is social is highly used for discovery zone. This is where a lot of consumers are looking, they're learning, they're being educated about their products, what they are, how they're used, and where to buy before they even step a foot inside of a store. So it's even more critical in 2026 that you have a plan that's going to be executable starting day one. And honestly, even before day one, you can do teasers right beforehand. You've seen that a lot, I'm sure, on your socials where brands tease out where they're going to go to a retail store weeks before it even launches to get people excited about it. The second biggest mistake that I've seen is not driving your own traffic. Retailers are not responsible for building your brand. They are providing access to their customers and hopefully to your customers. You are really ultimately responsible for driving your own traffic, sales, and demand. And the strongest brands that I've seen, they're consistently telling their community where you can shop. They're telling their followers, we're now in this store. I've even seen brands kind of tease it weeks before, like, get ready on September 15th. We're announcing our new retailer, or maybe putting their product on shelf, but blurring out specific things so you can't see where the retailer is going to be. I've also seen cool ideas like take a picture on shelf in X retailer, tag us, and you'll be entered to win. So just doing fun things to get your audience engaged to not only shop the retailer, but also utilizing that for content, right? That you can use on your social platforms as you continue to tell the story around the brand. Those strong brands that we see success in retail, they're utilizing their email community and they're emailing them to tell them what retailers consumers can come and shop in. And maybe even offering a discount or a deal. Aisle is a big one that a lot of brands are using right now in order to get that trial out there. They're also, of course, using their social media, and a lot of them are even using press. I have a past episode where I chatted with Gloria Chow, who is a PR expert, and she downloaded on how you can even source your own press. So a great opportunity to not have to put a lot of money behind it. She gave us some great tools on how to connect with those editors that can get you in those press. Brands that are winning, they're also using influencers. And a lot of times they're the founders of the brand. But utilizing influencers can come in many different levels. Of course, there are the really high influencers that probably charge an arm and a leg, but you can also do those, what a lot of people are calling micro influencers, a little bit less from a following perspective. A lot of times they may even have more engagement than even those larger influencers. And they give opportunity to not only showcase your brand, educate your brand, but oftentimes you can also allow them to talk about the retailer that your product is in. So that's a great avenue as well. And what I've seen from a success metric standpoint, as long as that influencer really connects with your brand and it doesn't seem like it's forced or pushed. Even meta ads, even if you are starting local stores, you can actually get the store locator, right, of the stores that you're in, and you can utilize Meta, and you can actually target a specific area along with that specific demographic. Another thing I see strong brands doing is going to the store, filming some content. It's one thing to say I'm in, giant grocery store, but when I'm in the store and I'm showcasing content and I'm talking to customers or I'm demoing my product or I'm giving out samples, that's an easy connection for your audience to see and remember where your product can be purchased. The bottom line is if you are not activating and pushing your audience into stores, your product may just sit there and you'll be just hoping that someone really discovers it. And that's not what you want to do. You honestly don't have the time because, again, buyers tick, tick, tick. They're looking at your performance every single week to see how you are coming into the plan that they have for you. So you really want to treat your retail launch like you do a marketing campaign. You're not launching a new product, even if you are just delivering your brand direct to consumer without telling them about it, right? So why would you not use that same mode of awareness when you are in retail stores? I mean, the bottom line is I really just don't want you to think that once you're on retail store shelves that the retailer is going to do all the work for you in order to get people to pick your product up and put it in their basket. You may think, okay, you're telling me that I got to drive my own traffic. So what's the point of me being in a retail store? There are lots of benefits to being in a retail store. You are going to get so much more eyes on your product than you ever have before when it comes to selling just online. You're also going to have the customer base that retailer already has that's already shopping the store. And if you're in a really high traffic store, you're going to have a lot of eyeballs walking by to see a product that they haven't seen before. You're also going to be able to utilize their marketing channels. So they're going to be able to promote you, whether it's, having those sales that you may sign up for in store or on their retail flyers, their email, their social. So utilizing a whole nother group of consumers to drive awareness around your brand. So I'm not saying that they're not going to help, but what I'm saying is you can't rely 100% on them. So email your list, post consistently, and tell your community where they can shop. Partner with creators. Give people a reason to go into store and choose you. Third biggest mistake And I would say as a buyer, I would really probably put this number one, ignoring your retail partner post-launch. Again, great. So excited. I got into stores. I've had all of this back and forth conversation with my retail buyer. They love me. They said yes. They said I launched September 1st. September 1st comes. My product's on shelf. I never talk to them again. I'm going to tell you right now, from a buyer's perspective, that's a red flag. Your retail partner is exactly what I just said. They are a partner. If you were in a relationship and you got married, you're not going to just ignore them after that day. Hopefully you're not. You're going to end up in divorce, which is the same thing you'll end up with when you have a retail partnership and then you don't talk to your retailer post that, right? You're going to end up separated. You should be having consistent conversation, some sort of relationship with your retail buyer. You want to understand, and you really should know this before you even launch, what your retail sales plan is. You need to understand what the goals are that that retail buyer has for you. So you're not disconnected from what they are looking at and comparing to every week when they're reading results on performance. And all retail buyers, honestly, are different. So, I can't sit here and tell you that you're going to have a monthly call with every retail buyer that you land on shelf. Some retail buyers will have calls. They'll have those monthly calls to understand and talk to you about performance, where you are, what forward looks like, what marketing planning is happening, what innovation you may have on your side. And that may be even virtual, or they may have you come in the office. Some retail buyers may just want conversation and communication via email. So they are responding to questions you may have and or updates they may be giving all via email. And then some retail buyers won't even really have connection or conversation with you until they are going through their line reviews again. And line reviews are basically when they're looking at what that upcoming season's assortment set is going to be on shelf across all the products within their category. What I would recommend is definitely upfront, before you then sign that contract, understand what success looks like for that retail buyer, for you and your product on shelf. And then once you're on shelf, understand the mode in which you're going to have those connection points with your retail buyer. If they are a super busy buyer that really aren't having those monthly or quarterly calls with you, it may be you taking the initiative to email them, every month or every quarter, providing updates as to what's happening with your business, with your performance, how you are trending to the sales that are projected for you. Any questions you may have in regards to other opportunities to drive incremental sales if you are not seeing sales to the plan that they gave you. The best brands really stay in communication. And I will say, even if you don't hear from your retailer, you still want to make sure that you are putting some sort of connection out there. Because honestly, sometimes retail buyers are so busy, we can read your email and forget to respond to you, but we remember. So really, the best brands, they do stay in communication. They're sharing feedback, they're giving updates, they're really showing that they're invested in that partnership. They're also being transparent. Hey, I've noticed that my sales are not hitting sales plan. Do you have any additional promotions that I could sign up for, or ideas on how to help drive incremental sales? I mean, they are experts. So, when you have an engaged retail buyer, they can really help you and assist you on, guide you on continuing to drive sales. So check in, send updates, share wins, and ask how you can support the store. Because really strong brands and connections with retail buyers will lead to more shelf space, more retail doors, more opportunities. I'm going to be honest, if there are two brands that are pretty much doing equal from a sales perspective, and I as a buyer are making a decision on who's going to live on shelf, I'm choosing the one that I reflect on and say, you know what, they may not be hitting the sales plan today, but they're consistently reaching out and asking to sign up for more promotions. And they're asking if they can go into the top stores and give samples out or provide demos. They're picking my brain to ask me, what are some things that successful brands have done? And thinking about how they can do very similar things, even if it costs less. Those are the ones that we still have belief that you can turn it around. I'm definitely not going to choose a brand to stay on shelf that isn't hitting their sales plan and I haven't heard from them in 6 months, over a brand that is active and consistently reaching out and showing up. That was a lot on that one because I feel very passionate about that one. Because let me tell you, I know as a founder that you are doing so much work to get that yes, but I'm going to tell you that retail buyers have a lot of work to do once that yes is done, from negotiating the contract with you to being your cheerleader on the inside to get everyone on board that this brand is going to be a winner once it's on retail shelves, to help planning the marketing out, filling out the random paperwork that's needed from an internal perspective, finding the space on shelf for your product to live, getting signage ready, especially if you have any sort of additional like marketing assets that are going to be supported when it comes to online or in store. So we do a lot of work as well. So we want you to win just as much. And it honestly is very disappointing once brands do all of that pull to get the yes, and then we do all of the work to get the product on the shelf, and then there's no activity or action post that. So if you're listening to this and you get in that first retail store, or you're even in retail today, there's really no excuse after you've heard directly from a retail buyer that you need to stay connected. The number 4 mistake that I've seen from brands after they get in their first retailer is expanding into more retail stores when they haven't even had success in the first one. A lot of founders may get into their first retail store and they're like, oh, I can get into 10 more stores. But here's the problem. If your product isn't selling in one store, why would you think that your product's going to sell in 10? All you're doing, honestly, is really just scaling a problem. Performance really matters. I mean, the best opportunity when you are launching in that first retailer, especially just starting with one, is you have that opportunity to really test out what works and what doesn't work. And then once you find success, once you understand the path to win, you can easily replicate that in the next retailer. We had on the show Marissa Sergi. She's the CEO and co-founder of Luvabella Wines just about a month ago. And I love how she talked about how she went into her first retailer, pitched the idea, the opportunity to be on shelf, got on that shelf, really drove the sales and success in that one store, and then used that data to then take it to the next. And that's what I would love to see for you, is really understanding how to drive sales, how to drive traffic. It is many times very different than how you are driving customers on your website. And so you're going to have to create a new muscle of getting people to get off of their couches and actually go into a store to buy your product. Because honestly, one strong account is extremely better than 10 struggling ones. Think about it. Even when it comes to making sure you understand your inventory flow and how many units you're selling per week per store. If you are truly focused on that first retailer and really maximizing what you can do and understanding traction and how you can drive sales and what your repeat consumers are and how you're going to get them to come back to store, and then you're just going to copy paste to the next retailer, it's such a easier win. It allows you to really have strong data, not only for the pitch, but also your confidence and believing that you can actually drive sales in those additional retail stores. And then the number 5 biggest mistake that I've seen brands that are launching in that first retailer is being out of stock. This is really one of the fastest ways to not only lose momentum, but also lose some trust. You lose some trust points with this one. Again, you've worked so hard to get on retail shelves. Customers are finally discovering you. They are coming in and they're actually buying your product. That's so exciting, right? And then your product isn't there. They come back for that repeat purchase, which is so ultra important, and your product's not on shelf. So what are they going to do? They are either going to pick your competition that is sitting right next to that empty space on shelf. They're going to just walk out of the store and not buy anything. But the worst of it all is that they have come in looking for an experience to buy your product and it's not there. And then on the other side, from the retailer's perspective, they've lost a customer. They've had space on shelf just for you, which is so valuable, and it's bare. It's a missed sale. It's a missed repeat consumer. And it's a disappointed customer and a disappointed buyer. Retailers really need reliability. Buyers need to trust that when you say you're going to deliver your product, that it actually delivers on time and in the full quantities of that PO. And it's not just about the retail buyer, because we also have to stand up in front of our finance team, in front of our inventory team, and be your advocate as to why the product didn't arrive in the DC on time, didn't arrive on shelves on time, didn't support the promotion, the sales goals that we have for not only your brand, but the entire category. Because when we miss in your brand, we could potentially miss in our total sales plan. I know for new brands that are getting into retail stores, it's really hard to plan how much inventory you really need to not only set the store from an initial launch perspective, but also to have inventory for those replenishment orders that are to come. My best advice I would just give you is as you are negotiating with that retail buyer to ask the question to understand what range will your initial order be. Sometimes they may not be able to give you the actual number, but they can based on how many stores that they plan on putting you in and what their typical presentation levels are and the sales goals that they have for you. They can give you an estimate of what that initial order is going to look like. And then from a replenishment standpoint, I would ask that question as well. A lot of times they're going to be able to provide to you based again on how they believe that you're going to perform what your monthly or biweekly orders are going to look like. Another question, honestly, is to ask them how often would I receive those replenishment orders? Because that can also allow you to understand how many times a month or a quarter are you going to be receiving POs. To be honest, it's hard on both sides to really have a true number, but at least if you can get an estimate out of the retail buyer beforehand and just be poised for not only that, but I would say even a little bit more. Because what if your product outperforms what they believe or plan it to be? Because after you've listened to this episode, you're going to have a really strong marketing plan before day one that's really going to drive a lot of sales, impact, and customers into store, right? So with that, you want to make sure you have enough inventory that that momentum continues. It's one thing to have a customer that goes on your website and finds their ideal product out of stock. It's another thing for a customer to get up, get in their car, spend the gas that is crazy high right now, drive all the way to a store, go and find the aisle that your product is in, which sometimes may be challenging depending on if they've been there or not. Look all on the shelves of all of the competition to find where your product is, and it's not there. I mean, as a customer, that annoys me, especially now because I look for a lot of emerging brands on shelf and I'll drive like 20, 30. I mean, I've even driven to Cleveland, which is like an hour and a half, to actually go buy a brand that I'm really passionate about and want to actually see in real life. And it's not there. So disappointing. And this is the time when you're in retail that you're trying to build up your customer base, not lose customers and not have them switch to competition. And honestly, when it comes to retail buyers, if they can't count on you to deliver your product on time in the quantities that they have asked for, they're going to find somebody else. So a retail buyer isn't really going to understand your not only initial sales, but also your repeat purchase, your customers coming back, the loyal consumer that your brand generates if you are consistently out of stock. And I know that there are times in which this happens, right? You do your due diligence to make sure you understand what your initial order is going to look like, what your replenishment orders are going to look like. But, maybe you have a manufacturer that initially was doing very small batches for you, and now they're at a capacity that they told you that they could deliver on time, but then they end up not. I would definitely heed the advice of telling your retail buyer in advance. So if you know that you are to deliver your product on July 1st and June 1st, your manufacturer tells you, I'm sorry, but we thought that we could move 2,000 units a day in production, but we actually can only move half of that. And because of that, we're not going to be able to deliver to you till 2 weeks after the initial deadline. You need to communicate that to your buyer so that they feel confident that you are coming to them in advance and you are not hiding anything. The worst thing you can do is if July 1st is that delivery date and your product is not there, not to give any heads up to the retail buyer, and they have to reach out to you to ask what's going on. I mean, those are buyers Mondays. We are looking at not only sales, but we're talking to our inventory team to confirm that everything that was planned to deliver delivered on time. And a lot of times, especially when you're launching a brand, there could be heavy marketing planned based on when you were going to deliver that product into the distribution center. And if you're delayed, and especially if they don't know about it, it's last minute changes to take your product out of an ad or off of an email. Not only does that cause just a lot of work on the retailer side, but you could lose a great spot that you may not be able to get for a long time because they have future things already planned. So I know that there could be those instances. We just had Samantha Ong, she's the founder of Joey Dolls on the podcast, and she was talking about how one of her whole orders from overseas got like caught on fire or got messed up in some way where she didn't get the inventory. So that is like a fluke. That's an anomaly of things to happen. I mean, if that happens, of course, you're going to let your buyer know in advance, but you want to do all of the things that you can do in order to make sure that you are delivering your product on time and again, in the quantities that are on that PO. Not short shipped, because if you can't deliver it all, you also need to tell the buyer in advance Hey, I'm going to be able to deliver on July 1st, but I'm not going to be able to deliver the 15,000 that's on the purchase order. We can only deliver 10. The balance will arrive on the 15th. Whatever that is, you need to let them know. So you really need to get serious about your operations and get serious early. Make sure you have forecasted demands. Make sure you are talking to your manufacturer and making sure that they can handle the additional inventory needs and make sure they can handle those additional orders. And you need to communicate proactively if any issues come up. Retail buyers have so much on their plate. So to try to track down where the inventory is not something we want to do, nor should we, right? It's really your responsibility. Just remember, consistency really builds confidence. It builds confidence that you are going to perform. It builds confidence that you are going to do the things that you say you're going to do. It builds confidence that if we add you to more retail doors, that you're going to be able to perform and execute. And we won't have to spend our Mondays emailing trying to figure out where the inventory is. So if you take nothing from this episode, take away this. Getting on retail shelves is an opportunity. It is not guaranteed. You have to do the real hard work once product is on store shelves to continue to stay on shelves, to have consumers come in and want to buy your product, choose your brand over everyone else on the shelf, drive the sales that are projected for you from that retailer, build the confidence that you're going to deliver on time, and building a healthy relationship so that you can continue to expand not only in those retail channels, but utilizing all that data information and relationship building that you do in that one retailer to take to that next and the next and the next. So if you're preparing to get into retail stores or you already are in some retail stores, ask yourself, am I setting my brand up to just get on shelf or to win on shelf? I really hope this episode helps you to really think differently about how to enter retail stores. And I think it's important to share this with other founders that are thinking about getting into retail stores that maybe, you just celebrated with because they just got into their first retail store, or even founder friends that are in retail today and, maybe struggling to perform there. These are all really strong tips that no matter where you are in the journey, you can take a step back and make sure that you're executing all five. So make sure you are hitting that follow button and following Shelf Talk podcast, that you are telling other founder friends about the podcast. I would love if you could take a minute and leave a review, send me a DM. I'd love to hear the progress that you've done based on the information that you're getting. I'm not only chatting with amazing female founders every week that have launched amazing brands and successfully got into retail stores, but I'm also dropping episodes like this where just getting a little bit more detailed into the education that I hope will help guide you in order to make really successful decisions on getting on retail shelves, staying on retail shelves, and most importantly, winning on retail shelves. See you next time.